Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. There's another paid request, this time for Mike, OCP Communications, one of my dearest friends. Now, this is for a list of my top 11 most underrated actors list. Like, which ones would I pick, in no particular order. Now, for those interested in requesting any type of videos or topics or randomness, whatever it may be, reviews, commentaries, whatever, feel free to send them either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, I have like 18 of them, but if I don't pick 11, you know what, I'm going to run down them all and I'll go back. Brad Dourif, Dolph Lundgren, Diamond Phillips, Tom Selleck, Peter Weller, Rutger Hauer, James Woods, Michael Biehn, John Cho, Danny Glover, Fred Ward. I also had Ken Foray, Jeff Speechman, Martha Costos, Aaron Eckhart, Steve James, Tim Thomerson, Gossett Jr. I'm sure I could list more, but I'd be here all day. But at least, I mean, like Brad Dourif, this is a guy that I think deserved a lot more bigger, more high-profile roles. I think he deserved roles that Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, those type of roles, or he could be a capable lead in a very like intense thriller. He just did not get a lot of opportunities to be a lead. Either he was portrayed as the villain, which he did a good job, like the voice of Chucky in Child's Play. He was wonderful in Exorcist 3, wonderful in that. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest he was in. Even in bit roles, like Stephen King's Graveyard Shift, he plays a rat exterminator. He gives a speech about Vietnam. And with the tear going down and just how real and committed he is to that role, as slim as it is, shows that this is a guy that did not sleepwalk through stuff. He's very talented, very intense actor. And he just deserved a lot more that he got. A lot more that he got. And it's a shame. It's a fucking shame that he did not get a lot of bigger, like I said, more high-profile roles. Dolph Lundgren, people don't laugh about that, but I think he's one of the more underrated action stars. I think he has a pretty decent filmography for a good chunk of his career, from Rocky IV, Universal Soldier, The Punisher, Men of War, I Come in Peace, Showdown Low Tokyo. I would say those are my favorites, but even then there's a while where it wasn't his fault, it's just the projects were not really much. When he started trying to take a bit more control, they got a bit better in the direct-to-video market. Say, like, The Russian Specialist. Oh, God, I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I'm bad with names today. Command Performance. And you look at Dolph and you go, okay, he could be a very likable guy, like as Jack Kane in I Come in Peace. If you watch The Punisher and you watch the deleted scenes in the opening, where you got to see him more as a cop, and he's just being friendly and likable with his partner, played by Gossett Jr., and his family. It's a nice contrast between the dead husk of a human, which the Punisher becomes, and I think it showcases that Dolph Lundgren actually did a good job with it. And I never thought he was as bad as people make it out to be. Early on, he had to get some of the rust off, like from Masters of the Universe. But after that, he was having a lot of fun as the villain Universal Soldier. He, like I said, is likable in films like Showdown Low Tokyo and I Come in Peace. Again, to me, one of the more underrated action stars. Always liked the Dolph, and I like quite a few of his films in his filmography. Diamond Phillips, LDP for Life. The First Power, love that film. I think he's very... People say he's a bit young to be a cop. I think he pulls off fairly well. And whether it be in that, or in Young Guns, La Bamba, films of that nature. I think an actor that did star in a decent amount of direct-to-video films, but seemed like a guy that deserved a more high-profile roles. And it's just that the films he was in were not like the first Power didn't do well. He was in this film called Renegades. That didn't do anything. It was an okay film. He was in another one called Extreme Justice with Scott Glenn. Some of them were not like the best role, like the best movies, but he was rather good in them. And that's the thing, if the films are not doing well, you just don't get more type of roles. But I think like, it would have been great if he was like the star of a action show. Like Kiefer Sutherland, his Young Guns co-star, got 24. Like if Lou Diamond Phillips got a 24 type of show, I think LDP would have been great at it. And it was always nice to see him, even in this made-for-cable shark film called Red Water. I thought it was decent, mostly for him. So I just big fan of LDP. Tom Selleck. Most people grew up with him with Magnum P.I. I saw bits and pieces, but I grew up with him more in the film Runaway. I love Runaway. Directed by Michael Crichton. Sadly, what happened with that film was people thought that was going to be the big hit, but at the same time, another sci-fi film came out. It was called The Terminator. And that became, the film people remember, not Runaway. But I still love Runaway. I think Tom Selleck does a great job as Ramsey, a guy who's afraid of heights, but he's still doing his job to go after these. In this world where technology and people use robots for household jobs, if they go a bit wanty, he's in there to stop it. But now you have this hacker, that's pretty much what he is, a hacker, messing around with these machines, turning them into murderous things, and Tom Selleck has to stop him. And whether it be films like that, Quigley Down Under, even this film he was in called In and Out, 3 Men and a Baby, which I'm a huge fan of. He's just a very likable, charming personality. And I think he would have made a good Indiana Jones, because he was up for it. And they would have cast him, but the people at Magnum P.I. said, no, he's got to do the show. But then it got delayed so long, Tom Selleck could have done both. Now granted, Ford is Indiana Jones. I'm just saying Tom Selleck, I think he could have pulled it off. I really do. And I'd be interested to see the other dimension where Tom Selleck did star in the Indiana Jones films. But, I mean, if he did that, then maybe he would not have been in films like Runaway, and I would have missed out on that, so maybe it worked out for the best, the way it happened. Peter Weller, of course, big fan of him from a film like this. There he is right there. Love Peter Weller. This is actually my favorite film of his. I think he's a very likable, everyman guy. Who's a guy who's just trying to do his job. He doesn't know how to be a leader. He's even reading manuals to try to be a better leader. That's my responsibility. Oh, bullshit. He just makes it that much more likable. So you have that everyman quality, but he can also play a role like RoboCop. Very different kind of role. Hard when you have to act in a suit, and the way he's moving his body, like mime type of training in order to handle that. But he still brought humanity. He brought more humanity to it than fucking Joel Kinnaman. That's my opinion on that. And always enjoy Peter Weller. He was you have Streamers. You have a film called 50-50, which deserves a Blu-ray. Again, just a nice commanding presence. A guy you could see as a natural leader. I'm talking about his performances and the people he play. In real life, I don't know. But the way he portrays himself and his acting roles, you see him as a natural leader in Streamers, or again just a a likable character in Leviathan, or always enjoyed him. He has a nice presence to him. Rutger Hauer, may he rest in peace. He can make a great good guy like in Blind Fury or Split Second, and he can make an intimidating bad guy like in The Hitcher. Wonderful talent, greatly missed. Sadly, he's no longer with us. This is a guy that just, again, with each role, he wasn't sleepwalking. He wasn't just being lazy. With his voice, with his tone, whether being Wanted Dead or Alive or various other movies, it's just he brought a sense of what the character was, and he was committed to it. In The Hitcher, it was a playful but scary villain taunting Seatown's Hell, like, come and get me. Let's see what you're made of. And Split Second, a guy who's hyper on chocolate and coffee and caffeine and being entirely fun in his dealings with his partner. I would say those are my two favorite roles of his. But also Blind Fury, where, yeah, he's blind, but he also got a sense of humor to him. He's wonderful with a sword, but then when he's walking, he thinks it's a dog, but it's actually an alligator that he walks over. It's just always nice to see him in a movie. Always nice to see him, and sadly, that's not the case anymore. So rest in peace to Mr. Rutger Hauer. Other people like James Woods, I think he's a very intense actor. Whether being a very off-kilter vampire hunter in John Carpenter's Vampires, or being a cop on the edge in Cop, or whether it be his fun banter with Michael J. Fox in The Hard Way. This is a guy that I see him, it brings a smile to my face because I know he's going to bring it. He's going to bring the intensity, the ferociousness into his scene, and whether it be in Any Given Sunday or whether it be in Videodrome. Yeah, again, one of those actors, it seems like he brings it each time, and he's never sleepwalking. And that he's actually having fun with his job. Unlike Bruce Willis. When I see James Woods act, it seems like he wants to be there. And then some. Which is infectious. Michael Biehn, I mean, just for hits alone and Aliens and Kyle Reese in The Terminator. This a guy that seemed like he would go into the bigger things. And yeah, he was in a couple, like Rampage for William Friedkin. Of course, he was in The Rock. But after The Terminator and Aliens, it didn't seem like he did a lot of other leading man roles. I mean, it was Terminator in 84, Aliens in 86, then you have the villain in The Abyss in 80. And it took a while to shoot that film. I missed around there, you had, or maybe after, was Rampage, which I wasn't really big on. I wasn't really a fan of Rampage. Not because of Michael Biehn, but just the movie itself. I don't know. Just didn't do much for me. But just one of those actors you see, is it alright? It's nice to see him in there. A man's man. Just a guy who I think been kind of undervalued by Hollywood. Which is strange, because the Terminator, Alien, but no one really used him in much movies. Now, I don't know if it's because of personal problems, or alcoholism, or something I don't know, but that's an actor that seemed like should have been utilized a lot more than he was. John Cho, I've talked about this guy quite a bit of times because I mentioned films like Searching a lot. And he's a guy who would go from fun stoner comedy like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle but then pull on a very emotional, hectic performance of a dad trying to find his daughter and searching, shows that the guy has quite a bit of range on him. He really does have a bit of range on him. And I think John Cho, that's the only reason I'm curious about Cowboy Bebop, because I don't know shit about the anime. I know there's controversy because the lady, the actress, was doing some stupid shit. But I am curious about it because of John Cho. Again, I don't know if it'll be worth the shit. But I'm like, I do like that actor. So, I'm curious about it for him. Danny Glover. I mean, what more can we say about Danny Glover? I mean, come on now, man. It's Lieutenant Mike Harrigan. Of course, Danny Glover's going to be on the list. And this role alone is why he's on the list. Because he gets praise for Lethal Weapon. He does not get enough praise as Mike Harrigan in Predator 2. The most underrated sequel of all time. A badass motherfucker. Kicks ass, takes names, great one-liners. That means you cut off my dick, you shove it up my ass. The way he handles the Predator, he's likable, he's tough, he's funny, he's easy to root for, and he's a badass, but he also has an everyman quality, so he's not a carbon copy of Arnold from Predator, he's his own individual, and he's a lot fucking better than Adrian Brody, or what's-his-face from The Predator. He's better than anybody in The Predator. Which makes this guy kicked the Predator's ass by himself, which they did not. So, Danny Glover, Predator 2, easily on the list. And then I put Fred Ward. Fred Ward is another actor that sadly he had chances, like Remo Williams. Fun film, entertaining adventure, based on the Destroyer books. Orion thought that was going to be their new, like their version of a James Bond franchise, and it didn't work out. It didn't do well. It has a great theme song, the theme music, I should say. The Fred Ward is very likable and funny as Remo. The plot, pretty basic, forgettable to be honest, but his performance, him dealing with Joel Grey, his teacher's master, that's what made the film work. Like I said, it had a fun adventure quality to it. But that film bombed. I think that killed a lot of his chances to be a lead. Because people go, oh, well, this guy can't lead a movie. He can't open a movie up. No one knows who Fred Ward is. But, I mean, there's that. There's Tremors. And then Tremors 2 Aftershocks, which I love as well. I think he worked well with Kevin Bacon, but it also showed that he could lead a movie in Tremors 2. He showed that to me in Remo Williams, but Tremors 2, he showed it even more. And that was a film that there was talks of it going to theatrical, but then it went direct to video. Love Tremors 2 Aftershocks. Very solid movie. One of my favorite direct-to-video sequels, honestly. In fact, I would say Tremors 2 Aftershock is probably the best direct-to-video sequel, in my opinion. In terms of being a very competently made movie for its budget and for what became of it. Compared to a lot of the other direct-to-video sequels out there. But yeah, Fred Ward is, I thought, was a talented guy that, you know, saw him in Uncommon Valor in '83. Worked very well with that wonderful cast. And sadly, throughout the mid-late 90s, he just did not get a lot of jobs. He was, what, in Chain Reaction with Keanu Reeves, which is kind of trying to be a... They tried to do the Tommy Lee Jones character, but he didn't feel like he was in the film much. So I thought he was underused and undervalued in Chain Reaction. He would pop every once in a while, but just not that often. I think he was in He was a police captain or something in... So I think he was in The Crow Salvation. He was in another film, Armored, I believe it was called. Like, he would pop up in these small roles, but nothing too major, sadly. When he got from the mid-90s to later on, which is sad, but again, another very talented actor. But I mean, other people I put like Tim Foray, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, who looked like he had all the tools to be a big star. I mean, he had the presence, he did utilize humor, but he could be a badass too. He could give good speeches like, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. He sold that and then some. But sadly, Tim Foray, other than From Beyond, Chainsaw Master 3, a bit role in Night Riders with George Romero, he didn't really get a lot of parts until Rob Zombie worked with him a few times. But even then, it wasn't really that much of a main role, sadly. Like, give him a starring role as the lead. That would be more interesting. But, yeah, Tim Foray is another guy that deserved a lot more. And then I'm putting people like Jeff Speakman. I'm a big Jeff Speakman fan. I love The Perfect Weapon, Deadly Outbreak. Sadly, his career didn't do a whole lot, but he has a couple of fun movies. Mark Dacascos, Drive Alone from 1997. Showcases he could be on the action film landscape. Aaron Eckhart, he's one of the best parts about Battle Los Angeles. I think he really pulls that film off very well as the lead. And yes, it's a basic soldiers versus aliens in a city, but it was a basic that I enjoyed, I liked, I thought it was fast-paced, I thought it was fun, and I thought Aaron Eckhart was really likable as the lead, the captain, the eventual leader of this group, and you see why people would follow this guy. I think he had that great quality to it. Steve James, this is a guy who's in American Ninja 1 and 2, and some other smaller roles, some Chuck Norris films like Hero and the Terror. He was in Avenging Force. This guy should have been getting a lot of the roles like what Fred Williamson and a lot of guys were doing in the 70s. They should have been giving this guy in the 80s to 90s. He should have been getting a series of action. Like, if he was able to work with PM Entertainment and like do these really kick-ass action films as a star, I think he had a likable personality. He had a good sense of humor to him. He had a good body and presence. So sadly it didn't work out, and then he sadly got sick, cancer, and he passed away. So rest in peace, Steve James. If they did Blade in the 80s, Steve James would have been the guy to cast. Tim Thomerson or Luke Cage. Like, if you did Luke Cage and you had Steve James, that would have been great. Tim Thomerson, I enjoy him in Dollman, Trancers films. He was in Uncommon Valor as well. Has a good personality to him that brings it, whether his Clint Eastwood type of role and his Brick Bardo in Dollman, or a bit more of a wisecracking cop in Trancers. Just very, again, likable personality to him. Always nice to see him when he shows up. Louis Gossett Jr., and this is a guy that won an Oscar for An Officer and a Gentleman. And after that, he got a couple roles here and there, but it just seemed like an actor that, very capable actor, he just did not get a lot of big roles after that for some reason. I mean, The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren, I think he's great in. Iron Eagle, of course, very successful. But then I think that's one of the reasons he kept doing the Iron Eagle sequels, because number one, it became his franchise, and they have consistent work with it. He wasn't getting a lot of big work in other places, sadly. He was good in The Principal with James Belushi. And then Louis Gossett Jr. it's Louis Gossett Jr. He just, like I said, brings it to each... And that's the thing with a lot of these actors. I don't see them sleepwalking a lot. I see them bring it to each role. That's something that Steven Seagal and Bruce Willis and some other actors should learn. They got presence, they got charisma, or they bring it to each role. They're not sleepwalking. And I appreciate that. So, with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.